Okay, people. I actually have work to do, so I can't really stick around and talk too much. But I figured I would let the just chatting stream keep on going. Um, so if people want to come on, I'm just going to leave this going. There are links and put them yet again. I changed some of the channels, so it's on my channel now as well. Um, and if somebody wants to come on, that's great. I am going to be doing other stuff. So, uh, yeah.
It's currently raining outside. I don't know if you can see. But the best thing to do when it rains is to read. Or to sleep. But hey, you know. Hi, Nakama. It's raining outside, so I'm stuck at home. Nice to see you too.
Saint Andrew. So Nakama says, "Hi, Andrew. I
Yep.
can't pop on at the moment, but it's nice to see you here."
Yep.
Now, are you on your computer or on your phone?
Computer.
Okay. So on the bottom, you see where it says present?
Mm-hmm.
Click on that.
Uh-uh.
And then click on share screen.
Mm-hmm.
And then pick a Chrome tab that has Google on it. There we go. Now, wonderful. Now, Google has this beautiful image search.
Mm-hmm.
And I have I have 3 images I want you to find for me.
Okay.
One of them is a Coptic Orthodox icon of the resurrection.
Mm.
One of them is a Coptic Orthodox icon of the Holy Mother and Child.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, no, not the resurrection, the crucifixion, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of them is a Coptic Orthodox saint who would be a great saint for Saint Andrew to emulate. And everybody who's watching would love for you to give a tour of icons which would beautifully express these ideas while I go and do my homework.
Wonderful.
You have a nice day.
All right. First up is the crucifixion. This is the. Let's see if it loads. I don't know if that's high definition enough, but this is the one that I have with me. I don't know if you guys can see my camera, but I got this one at church. I asked for an icon the first time I went in, and they popped in their little icon shop and gave that one to me. So it's wonderful. It's made by Isaac Fanous, who is the founder of the Neo-Coptic iconographic school. When Coptic iconography was dying out, he looked at the whole tradition. He went all the way back, even to the Fayum mummy portraits, you could say, and looked at the entire Coptic tradition. You can see works of his that are playing with what Coptic iconography would look like, and it eventually settled on something like this. So, it's great. Crucifixion. Here you've got this triangle of light. I think that's an excellent image of kenosis, of self-emptying. In Christianity, the self-emptying of God is very, you could say, pertinent or important. Usually will include something like there's the skull of Adam at the bottom, and then something like Christ's blood dripping onto it, right? I think that's an image of atonement. It's like an image of the harrowing of Hades, right? Christ destroying death by death. There's Saint John on Christ's left, and then Mary on his right. Well, the 3 women. The thieves on the cross. There's a lot of like left and right type symbolism here. I'm assuming Saint Michael and Saint Gabriel. Usually, when you have two angels, they're Saint Michael and Saint Gabriel. The Roman soldiers and the crowds. Yeah, the crucifixion is absolutely crazy, and I do not think I understand it enough. What's next? Holy Mother and Child. Let's get... I'm actually not going to do a Coptic one. Because I really love this Hodegetria icon. Let's see if we can pull it up. Hodegetria means she who points the way. So whenever you look at a Hodegetria icon, you'll have, this is a pretty good one, you'll have the Holy Mother and then usually pointing towards Christ with her other hand. Us Orthodox and the Catholics, we all love the Holy Mother, mostly because she points us towards Christ, right? Like she's the source of the incarnation, an image of the church. It's like if Christ is God become man, the Holy Mother is an image of how we can participate in the incarnation, you know? It's like she makes space for Christ, which is what we all hope to do in our lives. Anyhow, usually on her veil, she'll have 3 stars. That's her perpetual virginity before, during, and after Christ's birth. We'll never show her hair. People say that, like, her veil, I don't know. Like, her veil can't be removed or something like that. I don't know. There's all sorts of, like, mystical theology about her. But hey, you know, she's the mother of God, you know? Usually she holds the Christ child. In these Hodogetria icons, she holds the Christ child. Usually when she holds him, it's like he's seated, you know, like she's the throne of Christ, you could say. What I love about these Hodegetria icons is that she points towards Christ, and Christ has the crucifix in his halo. So, yeah. It's like in the wedding of Cana, when Christ first starts his ministry, the Theotokos, the Virgin Mary, comes up to Christ, and she's like, "There's no more wine." You know, like these newlyweds have run out of wine, and Christ is like, "What are you doing? It's not my time yet. I'm not ready to die." And then he fills the wine anyway. So, yeah, crazy stuff. She's the best of the saints, absolute best. Next, Jacob wanted me to show an image of a saint. I don't know. Let's see, Saint John of Damascus. Here's Saint John of Damascus. I wish there wasn't that watermark. But as you'll notice, there's an icon in this icon. And that's because St. John of Damascus is revered as one of the defenders of iconography. During, I think, the first iconoclasm, he wrote treatises in defense of the icons. He's really great because he takes the theology of Chalcedon and connects it to iconography. He points out that part of humanity is an image. That, as Saint Athanasius said, God, seeing man worshipped every lowly thing, himself became lowly, that man might worship him, right? God's kenosis, or self-emptying, is for our fulfillment, right? And icons are a part of that. Icons participate in that. It's only fitting that he gets an icon, huh? He was also very humble. When he was defending icons, he had his hand chopped off because he was writing all these treatises, you see. And then we say that there's the Holy Mother healed his hand, right? In this Hodegetria icon that St. John's holding, you'll see there's this third hand right here. And that's St. John of Damascus's hand. Yeah. The hand that was cut off. He had it miraculously healed, right, with like a little line where it was chopped off. And after that, he became a monk. Not many monastics would take him because he's a learned guy, and I don't know, perhaps people were imposed by his saintliness. But one monk took him. He was like, you have to be completely obedient to me, right? No delusions of grandeur. And another story is that I think St. John of Damascus was disobedient in some way, or there was some sort of misunderstanding, right? And the monk kicked him out, right? He was like, you've broken the rules. And then St. John of Damascus like entreated the other monks to ask him like how this monk would forgive him and take him back and all that sort of stuff. And the monk said, all right, but you have to clean all the latrines by hand. And St. John of Damascus the monks were like hesitant to tell him, but when he did, St. John was so overjoyed that that you know he would be forgiven. He was completely humble and didn't care about at all about having to clean all that filth. And there's also a tradition that like the Virgin Mary chastised that monk, saying like, "This guy, he's defended the icons, don't be so harsh on him." But yeah, he's the one that speaks to me most clearly because it's through him that I see how icons are so important, and how a Chalcedonian Christology affects iconography. Yeah. I'm not too sure if I can get a Coptic one of this because he's not a Coptic saint. He is an East Orthodox saint. Us Copts split at Chalcedon, and he comes after Chalcedon. In I don't really know of any other saint that I'd be as attached to, mostly because I'm a bad Christian and I don't know my saints. But yeah, I'll stop sharing. Different coloring between the inner and outer garments is interesting. For Saint John Damascene, usually that's because we associate green with the Holy Spirit, right? The life giver, the paraclete. And with the essence energy distinctions, we see the East Orthodox see the Holy Spirit as like the giver of God's energies or actions, right? And that's shown most clearly in saints and in icons, right? It's through icons that I can see the glory of God. So yeah. Saint John of Damascus also was under the rule of the Ottomans at the time, and his defense of the icons in a Muslim environment is very admirable. I should get some sort of patron saint. I don't know. If it's St. John of Damascus, I'll probably have to talk to my priest about it. If it's not St. John of Damascus, I have to look at more saints.
I'm pretty sure you just doubled my knowledge of icons right there.
I'm glad to. Did you like anything?
Yeah, I mean, coming from a Protestant background, we don't do a whole lot with icons, but I mean, just you explaining Saint John of Damascus right there, that there's a lot in that picture that for a Protestant self to look at that and it's like, oh, that's a pretty picture, but It's a lot more than just a pretty picture when you break it down like that. So I found it interesting.
Thanks.
And you also mentioned, you said the split between Coptic and Eastern Orthodox was at Chalcedonius, or
Chalcedon, yeah, the
Cal-
yeah, it's a church council.
what was the contention point there?
So there's a lot of church history. I think the split itself, I think, is due to a lot to politics and linguistic differences. Although I do think our theology has to get resolved. But with that out of the way, let me start explaining this stuff. Usually when people talk about Christ, they'll say like he has two natures, divine and human, that are resolved in his person. That is the Chalcedonian position. And when they say that, they'll point to the Greek words two feces that are resolved in his hypostases. At Chalcedon, us Copts split off, and a little bit later, the Syriacs did as well. The Armenians did, and then the Malankara are under the Syriacs, and the Ethiopian and Eritrean were under the Copts at the time as well. So at the time, this split was like half and half of the church. So kind of big deal. So when the Chalcedonians say two feces and one hypostasis, they take feces to mean nature and hypostasis to mean instantiation. Usually us Copts will point to Saint Cyril's term phrase mia physis tau theo lugo ses archomene, or which you can roughly translate as one united nature of God the Word incarnate. It's hard to explain because Saint Cyril doesn't keep that term as one consistent thing. Like every time he says it, he'll have a different emphasis. And there's some debate over whether Cyril meant nature when he said mia physis, or whether he meant instantiation when he said feces, because feces doesn't just mean nature and hypostasis doesn't just mean instantiation. So yeah, the whole thing's kind of a mess. There's some other stuff going on as well, but if I kept talking about this, I would talk forever. But if you want to know how Chalcedon, how St. John uses Chalcedon, people will say that you can't depict God, right? Like God's infinite, he's divine, yada, 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 right? St. John will say that the divine and human natures are resolved perfectly in Christ. And when we depict Christ, we're not depicting the divine nature. We're depicting his person. And if the natures are resolved in his person and we depict his person, that's perfectly fine. That's what he incarnated for. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And just for the record, I'd be perfectly fine with you going on forever about this stuff.
Yeah. I'm not too caught up on the church politics part because there's a bunch of back and forth. I just focus on the ideas.
It gets rather difficult to parse out 2,000-year-old politics.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Um,
So what's it like having the Coptic framing in the U.S.? Are there? I don't know many people from the Coptic Church. I really have no idea how many there are in the U.S.
mm-hmm. So most cops you meet will not really know the difference. They might know that there is a difference, right? In the catechism, the priest will usually bring it up, just so you know the difference. They're not going to get into the whole philosophy bit because it's really, I mean, I think it's a linguistic difference. Well, I think it might be a linguistic difference. It might just be like a little technical difference. But for the laity, for people who don't look into it, it doesn't matter really. And our liturgies, our church services will still use the terms hypostasis and feces. So I think there's enough information that cops can be genuine when they want to look into this stuff. And if they don't, they'll still have unity with other Orthodox brethren. As for like just being Miaphysite in whatever America, a bunch of Ortho will be like, "You're Monophysite. You don't accept Chalcedon," which is I absolutely hate because we don't call ourselves Monophysite. We are not Monophysite, and I think you're doing a disservice to church history if you call us Monophysite. But most of the time, it just like doesn't come up. It's like, you know how Sam gets into like all of this. He's an autodidact, right? He studies church history, whatnot, but then he goes to a Protestant church, usually that's like Unitarian or Unitarian friendly, and nobody really knows his YouTube channel, so he kind of flies under the radar. It's pretty much like that with me, except I don't look at like all of church history. I just look at Miaphysitism. So
Well, as my 40-year-old self, keeping my 20-year-old self in mind, I think you're doing your perspective's much better than my 20-year-old perspective was, if that makes sense.
thanks. It's all because of Saint John of Damascus. Like for instance, the Copts didn't have iconoclasm, so they don't have as detailed you could say a philosophy of iconography. So if you ask whatever Coptic iconographers if like they could point you towards theology of icons, they'll point you towards the Chalcedonians, the Saint John of Damascus, Saint Theodore the Studite, all that stuff. They don't care. If we're close enough in theology such that like our iconographers are pointing towards your theology, I think we are very close brothers.
some point it gets pretty silly to really feel too strongly about the division when you have to drill down so deep to find it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the laity certainly should see ourselves as brothers. Like, I don't know about the East Orthodox, but us Copts and most Oriental Orthodox certainly see the East Orthodox as brothers. I think our whatever theologians should work all this stuff out. I want to know if Father Stephen DeYoung thinks that our terminology should be resolved, or if I can say mia physis tau theo lugo whatever sus argumene, and he can say whatever diophysis, and we both know that we mean the same thing, or if we should all go to diophysis. So yeah. I'll be honest though, like most cops, when I start talking about miaphysitism, like don't really know what I mean. They know that like miaphysitism is in their tradition, but
So, what kind of led you to dig so deep into some of this stuff, if you don't mind me asking?
So I grew up Protestant. I grew up non-denom, and I went to a Lutheran high school, and the kind of Lutherans are very interested in like historical analysis, right? They love the Bible, right? Sola Scriptura, and a lot of them will try connecting themselves to the early church, right? Like there's this whole kind of narrative that Rome got corrupt and we're relying upon an earlier tradition, and we do so through the Bible, right? So I started studying the early church, and obviously you're going to run into Orthodoxy and Catholicism with that. And because of that, I started becoming more, Orthodox and Catholic, and seeing all my Christian brothers as actual, brothers who are engaging with this, 1,000-year-long tradition, and digging deep. When I first went to a Coptic Orthodox church, it was because it was the closest Orthodox church nearby. And when I knew they weren't East Orthodox, so I looked up the difference and I saw this whole miaphysitism thing, and I could not tell the difference. I'm not sure that many people understand the difference, and if there's a difference, and I'm not sure that I understand if there's a difference. So I was like, heck, might as well, So I went to the Coptic Orthodox Church, and I started, becoming an actual member, doing the chants, getting to know everybody, going to liturgy. And what really rubbed me the wrong way was all of these East Orthodox folks who kept calling us monophysites and heretics and all this sort of stuff. And here I was, this Protestant who became inundated with church tradition and in so doing started becoming Orthodox. And here's these other Orthodox people who have grown up with this stuff and who claim to be, successors of the apostles, and they're not even getting the language right. And I don't think they've looked at the theology of both sides, and they're making all of these wild accusations. So this whole defense of miaphysitism thing that I'm kind of doing is pretty much just saying that we shouldn't be so quick to judge both sides, because this whole thing is very complicated.
That I know Jacob brought up the James, brother of Jesus. I can't remember the author's name. I haven't read that book, but I've read some of his stuff. And my big takeaway from that was these waters appear to be awful muddy. I'm not sure. I feel strong enough to go on to offense on what happened back then, if that.
Yeah. I'll say that if Jacob thinks, I'm not too sure, I haven't read the book at all. So if Jacob thinks that this is some sort of Roman adjacent rewriting by people like Josephus and I don't know, Paul and all that sort of stuff, I think they should look at the Assyriac Church of the East, because even at the time, it was known that the Assyriacs were somewhat separate from the rest of the church because they were under the Persians. And they used the Peshitta Old Testament and whatnot, unlike us using the Septuagint. And they have a whole different tradition. And even the terminology they use is different. Like, for instance, they'll say Christotokos instead of Theotokos for the Virgin Mary. And I can see that being more palatable to, Jacob and Hezi.
Yeah, the Christotokos makes more sense with some of the books I've read, touching on some of that.
Yeah, I understand how it could. One thing I'd like to ask Father Stephen Young is whether the difference, there's, in the Nicene Creed, we use O Theos for God the Father. And it's like a participle before Theos. So it'd be something like the God. And when we use hypostasis or instantiation, we use it in a different manner for God the Father and for the other persons of the Trinity. When we say God the Father is a hypostasis, we don't mean that he's a hypostasis of God. We mean that God is a hypostasis. When I say hypostasis, think instantiation. Like, this here is an instantiation of pen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we say God the Father is a hypostasis, we don't mean that there's penness behind God the Father and God the Father is a pen. We just mean that there's no penness. God the Father is a pen. There's nothing behind God the Father, but God the Father is an instantiation.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying there. Where it differentiating the God above all and the aspects of God that we interact with. Is that one way? Is that fair to put it like that?
Yeah. And then when we talk about the other persons of the Trinity, we say that they're hypostases of God the Father. Right?
Okay.
We'll say Son of God or Holy Spirit, right? We don't use O Theos for the other persons of the Trinity.
Okay.
So, yeah. So when we say Theotokos, we're not saying O Theotokos. We're saying Theotokos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. I think that linguistic difference is part of the split, but it's. I need to learn more about the Syriac Orthodox Church because I hear some parts where they say they accept Nicaea and other parts where they say they don't. So I don't know. I definitely need to learn more.
To me, it sounds like you're onto something where uh, a lot of these fights do seem based in linguistic, and I mean, even using the same word, there's multiple interpretations to where you can split things. And
Yeah. Yeah. What usually happens is that like with the Oriental Orthodox churches and I think with the Syriac Orthodox Church, you get run over by the Muslims and people just do a holding pattern where they preserve the tradition of the church and don't really develop too much. Although I definitely need to learn more about that. But what ends up happening is that you have like calcified churches and theology of fifth or maybe even third century churches. Like talking to Coptic Orthodox priests, they'll mention how like Orthodoxy almost died in the cities and it was preserved by the monastics. And we took a lot of stuff from the monastics in our churches today. So, yeah.
the other day, you said your dad was from the Fort Wayne area.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So was he the Lutheran influence, I'm assuming?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, he's the one that planned out the whole Lutheran high school type thing. So that's because I was a horrible student in 8th grade. So
That I laughed because how long have you been in the Coptic Church?
year or so now.
So
Yeah.
you sounds like you've learned an awful lot about this stuff in a year's time, and the 8th grade horrible student makes me laugh.
Yeah. Thanks.
It is fascinating how much easier stuff is to learn when you have that internal interest in it that
Mm-hmm.
can be a driving force.
Yeah. It's wonderful because I I put it this way. I can study the philosophy of Plato, see how it impacts the theology of Saint John of Damascus, and um, venerate his icons in church. It's like all of my interests are being culminated in this sort of stuff. So it's wonderful.
And when you start seeing different ideas bouncing off each other, and kind of, to me, even if it's completely imaginary and all in my head, it's I like bouncing those relationships off.
Mm-hmm.
So what got you into chemical engineering?
Well, I liked chemistry in high school. I had a really good chemistry teacher. And my dad was like, don't go into chemistry. There's no money in chemistry. If you want to do anything remotely chemistry related, go to chemical engineering. And yep, that's how I became a chemical engineer.
I do think it would be a lot easier for a chemical engineer to get into a chemistry field after school than vice versa.
Mhm.
I am a little partial to engineering, or biased.
Mhm.
My interaction with college, I do not have a degree. I've dropped out multiple times. That long stories there, but I think 2.5 years is where I can really say into a electrical engineering degree.
Yeah, EE is hard.
Once we started doing 3D magnetic fields with triple integrals, I'm like, yeah, I don't know about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I took 1 quarter with that stuff, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to use this every day.
When I went back to school after getting out of the Navy, I was an electrician in the Navy, so that definitely helped some there. But that was a technician level. No integrals required, really.
Yeah.
And you're just starting up another quarter right now? Are you on quarter system?
Yeah, I'm on break right now, which ends this week. And then after that, it's another quarter.
What classes do you have this next quarter?
I have a elective chemical engineering class, which is all on like hydrogen and whatnot. It might be on hydrogen fuel cells. I should probably look at the website. I have organic chemistry and a discrete mathematics class, which is for a technical breath. So, yeah.
Okay,
Should be.
discrete math, that gets more into your logical math and kind of almost coding, right?
Yep. It's for a coding technical breath. So
Okay.
fits
I
right
never
in.
took
Yep.
I never took that class, but I had some computer science friends that it sounded pretty interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Comp sci is interesting yet hair pulling.
On the boat I was on, we had electrolysis machines to produce oxygen. We would dump the hydrogen, but there's a transition from some older technology to smaller, low pressure electrolyzing unit, I think is what they referred to it as. I think they kind of stole it from NASA. I don't know, but there's some of that stuff's pretty interesting. The way they're using membranes to split oxygen and hydrogen.
Yep. Yeah. These days, a lot of work is done into like those types of membranes and lattices and whatnot, just because actual chemical processes tend to make impurities and need to be managed and whatnot. If you just have like a physical process, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, those old style oxygen generating machines were all relay logic because they were all built really before Navy was willing to use semiconductor. And the troubleshooting manuals we had for that, I mean, you had the functional description in one book, and then there were two different troubleshooting books that you could flip through and try to trace all the relay logic to figure it out. And you now you have a PLC, and it's just like, what is this number? Oh, that's the problem. Okay. The world of difference.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny because chemical engineering really doesn't move that fast. You end up with like old machinery in these plants or whatever, and they'll keep all this stuff, um, the instructional manuals and the whatever troubleshooting devices and all this like flow correcting stuff, um, just to keep those machines going, because they're a pain to replace, and it's kind of hard to understand uh, decades old technology when all your chemical engineers are studying the new stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's become so specialized to really dedicate much time for that old technology. In some ways, it kind of feels like you're not spending that time on more future or forward-looking technologies, I'll say. But
yeah.
I mean, we still use COBOL and archaic computer science languages for a lot of big infrastructure that
Mm-hmm.
seems questionable whether they'll ever change that.
Yep. Yeah. My dad does like radar systems for jets and whatnot. So the coding stuff he does has to be fast. Um, so the way he describes it, it's like a whole different ball game, because you can't just be, you know, safe with your code and use all this old infrastructure. You have to really streamline it. So sounds interesting.
Yeah, when you're messing with that type of stuff, it's higher stakes in some ways. As far as it's one thing to if you click a link on a website and it's a dead link, that's not that big of a deal. But if a missile blows up when it's not supposed to, that's a big deal.
Yep. Yep.
Ever been out to Indiana?
Yep. A couple times I got grandparents out there.
Okay.
Yeah. They're pretty cool. I think they're Catholics. Yeah. And I've got an aunt out there with her, husband, my uncle. Yeah. Seems like a really nice, chill place.
I'll agree with that, but I also had to spend a significant amount of time away from it to appreciate a lot of that subtlety.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up,
Yeah.
I could not wait to get away. And after spending 8 years in Washington State, which not knocking Washington State, there's a lot of great stuff out there, but I often refer to it as every place has its own weirdness, and Midwest Indiana specifically is my type of weirdness.
Yeah.
It's a slower pace of life, which as I get older, I appreciate more and more, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And fair amount of Amish in the area, so that helps keep some perspective in some ways.
Yeah. I think my grandpa got his dog from the Amish, and he did and still does some dog breeding, which is cool. And we got a pecan pie from once, which was like absolutely amazing. So
Those guys can cook. They're
yep.
I don't know if you've ever been. There's Shipshewana in northern Indiana. It's kind of a Amish community, but they have more accessible things for the English. That's what they call non-Amish. So that they have. There's a restaurant there. I think it's called the Essen House, and oh my god, that is some of the best food I've ever had. I mean, once you've had their fried chicken, you've ruined fried chicken from any place else, pretty much.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Homemade mashed potatoes and noodles. Ah.
Steak. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Man. My dad can still grill a mean steak. He says the trick is just a ton of butter.
Hard to make mistakes with too much butter when in regards to taste. That's a very Midwestern philosophy there.
Uh-huh.
Remember eating biscuits and gravy out in Washington State, and you really eat that stuff? How can you not? This is delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Might be harder tacking a bowl. It tastes good.
Mm-hmm. Biscuits are soft and buttery. They just melt in your mouth. Oh my gosh. Making me hungry already.
So your parents out in California?
Yep. Yeah, they're both here.
I haven't really spent too much time in California. There for a short period of time, I was working for a 3D printing company, and we had a job there, so I spent a week or two there.
Might be a good thing. Yeah. Whereabouts in California?
Oh, that was I can't drawing a blank on the name, but it was kind of southeast of LA, I think.
Okay.
It was look more desert than most landscapes I'd been in.
Might be like Mission Viejo, somewhere around there.
Is there a Chico?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It might have been Chico.
Mm-hmm. That's neat. Yeah. Usually away from the coast, you get less liberal virtue signaling types.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to go visit some of the national parks out there, and now that was a part of Washington State I really fell in love with. Was once I got to shore duty, I could go out, had more time to go out camping and hiking in the mountains, and it was almost spiritual to me, getting out there and just immersed in raw nature and how big nature is when you're looking out from a elevated position out over. I mean, coming from Indiana, we don't ever have anything like that. It's too flat. So just being able to see for miles and miles was an experience I wasn't familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, my dad used to take me to Yosemite every couple of years. And that was great. Gave me a real love of the national parks. Usually when we go on road trips, we hit up a couple of national parks as well. And really helped spark my quarter collection because, some of the quarters got national parks on the backs of them. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd kind of forgotten that. Yosemite is on California's, isn't it?
Yep. We got a good one.
I'll admit, as much as I like to trash California, that there's some off. Yosemite is one thing I'm jealous of, for sure.
Yeah.
I have know some people in the Orange County area, and to hear them talk about being able to choose whether to go snowboarding or to the beach is like that. That sounds all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Ever go up North California, Oregon, Washington State area?
I'm afraid not. No, I haven't been up there much at all. I've pretty much just stay around here, SoCal, Orange County area.
Okay.
It's really nice because it never really gets too hot or too cold, and in the suburbs, like everything is pretty much walking distance. So yeah, it's kind of, I can see how it's like Indiana. Although it's more spread out in Indiana, I think. You gotta drive more.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Fort Wayne, there's a fair amount if you're still in the actual city and not the suburbs of it.
Mm-hmm.
But from city to city, that if you don't have a vehicle, you're not doing a whole lot unless you're in Fort Wayne.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. My great uncle, he made like a patent for license plates for 4x4s so that they can go on the highway and whatnot. So sitting on all that cash, he's a big car guy. So he takes his cars down these long, straight dirt paths and just sees how fast he can get to them. So yeah, it's really great going out there.
People, there's some people that get pretty serious about four wheeling down around here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not uncommon to see a pickup truck with mud all down the sides and dirt bikes and four wheelers just covered in mud.
Yep.
Have you thought much what you want to do after school?
Nope. I don't know. Figure I'd manage some plant somewhere.
I'm sure you will. That, as much as a pain as that engineering degree is, once you get it, I guess I can't say for sure because I don't have one, but from my experience in that area, that once you get that degree, that opens you up to a lot more than just what that specific degree gives you.
All right. Yeah, I should probably look at internships. Although usually for chemical engineering, they're kind of hard to get. So we'll see.
Well, not to plug Fort Wayne too much. Have you ever heard of Steel Dynamics?
I think so. My grandpa used to work in a rubber factory up there. Steel Dynamics. My dad might have a shirt with that logo. So yeah.
If you're looking for summer internships, I would say I would throw your resume in there because they do like to do a lot with interns.
Yeah, and I can live with my grandparents up there. That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
Steel.
just the thought.
Yeah.
Their main office is in Fort Wayne, and then they have a couple different factories. One in Columbia City, and the other one address is Butler, Indiana. But both of those are driving distance from Fort Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Columbia City does a lot of rebar and railroad ties, and Butler does a rolled steel.
Yep. Here, process engineering. Yep. Process engineering internship. I'll keep it in the back pocket.
I do think there's a lot of value in getting an internship, no matter where you do. Just start that networking process, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a beneficial experience just to see how things operate outside the school system a little bit.
Yep. Hello, hello, Antonio.
Trying to think what other stuff is around Fort Wayne. There's also a L3 Harris that
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you might be able to ask your dad more about that. He might know more than I do about that place. They get into some of the military communications, and I guess I'm not exactly sure what all they do, but that
Looks
something.
like it. Yeah, aerospace and defense company. Yeah, it's like the one my dad works at, Mercury Defense Co. or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that off the top of my head, but I know there's a lot in that area, or in that field. There's a lot of distributed companies that work for in that area.
Mm-hmm.
What school are you going to?
UCLA.
That that's a flashy school around Indiana. That alone will draw some attention.
Yeah. Yeah, it's campus is pretty nice. The professors are so.
Yeah, I think that's universal for. I mean, you got the professors that really are just there to do research and annoyed that they have to teach from time to time.
Yep.
At least there's YouTube for that now.
Mhm.
That's kind of where I came across Jordan Peterson. Was after I got out of the Navy, I was taking a psychology class, and I started looking up stuff on YouTube for psychology, and I can't remember how long I was watching some of his videos, and then all of a sudden he kind of blew up with "You aren't going to dictate what language for me." Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I've been
Mm-hmm.
watching this guy. He seems pretty reasonable to me, and all of a sudden they're trying to crucify him. What's going on here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, it was the other way around. I started off with the whole pronouns thing and then worked backwards towards psychology and whatnot.
I had heard of, familiar with who Jung was, who Freud was before that point, but never really understood any difference. And Peterson really got me into some of the Jungian stuff that I find fascinating.
Mm.
And in some ways, I mean, the field of psychology is kind of a new invention. Rightly or wrongly, I have tried to map some of the Jungian stuff on the Bible and left me with an impression that some of the historical Bible stories touch on a lot of psychology before they really had the words and language of psychology.
Mm.
That might not be kosher to do such a thing, but I liked it.
Don't worry. There's always, I don't know, a little bit of flexibility.
I hope so, because I'm in a lot of trouble if not. I guess thinking about what I should be doing versus what I'm doing, there's some stuff I should probably
Go.
get working on. But hey,
Uh-huh.
it's been nice talking to you, Andrew.
Yep. You as well.
I don't want to make too many assumptions with this comment, but as a fellow introvert, I don't want to pressure you to talk more, but it would be nice if you talked more at times.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good one.
You as well. It stopped raining. Is this the study stream? I don't know. I probably should be studying. No, this isn't Hebrew Bible study. I think that comes later sometime. Maybe tonight. In the meantime, I've been reading Hasidic Masters, which Jacob has graciously lent to me. It's been pretty good so far. Hasidic Masters. So in I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's this movement within Judaism called Hasidism. I don't know, Hasidicism. I've got no clue, but like that big, Hasidic, right? Hasidism, yeah. So this is pretty much the main movers and thinkers of Hasidism. Hasidism. I've got no clue how to pronounce that. Yeah. It's really great because it's not some sort of dry historical book. It's informative and instructional, you could say. It's like each figure that it mentions, it'll give a brief autobiography. Is autobiography the one that they write? I've got no clue. Biography, I guess. And then it'll give some brief excerpts of what they've written. So still kind of new here. Well, welcome. This is mainly Jacob's portion of this little corner of the internet. So it's concerned with Judaism and its interaction with Christianity mostly. We're also currently reaching out to the Muslims. Yeah, kind of interesting. I talked earlier about how this little corner has been taking the meaning crisis to mean propositional tyranny. I'm not too certain how familiar you are with all this sort of language, but basically, this little corner has seen the meaning crisis as a result of this idea that all knowledge is propositional. It's statements in your brain. It's little factoids you can write down. And this little corner is trying to respond to that by encouraging participatory, embodied knowledge, like playing an instrument. Currently, a lot of this little corner is like delving into their religious traditions or philosophical practices. Yeah. I disagree. I mean, I think they're wrong. I don't think the meaning crisis is due to propositional tyranny. I think it's also due to, I call them parasitic, unwise practices that propositional tyranny has left us open to, right? Like, I'm in America, like practically a third of us are overweight. That's a meaning crisis, you know? There's people on here who talk about alcoholism or depression, also forms of meaning crises, and I don't think they should be lumped under the umbrella of the meaning crisis and it's all due to propositional tyranny and whatnot. I think we should move from the meaning crisis to the meaning crises and talk about these things particularly. I talked about how this little corner is trying to cultivate embodied knowledge. And I think this little corner has to realize that embodied knowledge goes both ways. That I can participate in unwise practices, right? Like if we're just attacking propositional tyranny, we're gonna miss alcoholism and substance abuse and all that sort of stuff. Yep, you're exactly right. This little corner has focused on the fact that the culture has focused a lot on propositional knowledge, right? Everyone has to go to college. Everyone, you know, just trust the science, all that sort of stuff. And that leaves a hole for embodied practices, like what you should do, how embodied practices affect your thinking, right? Like I can make hand motions when I speak. I can, when I play an instrument, that's also affecting my knowledge. Some people within this little corner go towards meditation and whatnot. And the culture's focus on propositional knowledge has completely left all that stuff aside. So it's mostly been trying to reclaim that focus on non-propositional knowledge, you could say. Embodied practices. Yep. I think this little corner also should address unwise propositional knowledge, you could say. Like harmful practices. I don't know, kind of repeating myself here. There's this cog sci professor, John Vervaeke, who's pretty active within this little corner. He's very involved in 4E cog sci. He says knowledge is embodied, exapted, external, and embedded. Embodied, meaning that my knowledge isn't just in my brain, it's also these hand motions that I'm making. It's also the little handshake that I do with my friends. It's the instruments I can play. It's how I can feel this book, but I can also feel through the book when I tap on something. Embedded, my cognition isn't just me thinking, it's also me thinking in my environment, right? This is the whole idea of causality, is like your cognition reacting to your environment, right? Embedded. I'm currently on a live stream. I'm talking to a screen because my cognition is currently embedded. Somewhere I heard the phrase, you can't think your way out of depression, but you can move your way out. Yes. For me, getting out of depression has been like waking from a dream. I'm not too sure how I did it. I'm not too sure if I'm out either, but hey. Speaking of depression, use an example. I used to be like hella depressed, and um, I got suicidal once, and it was like really imaginal. Vervaeke uses the word imaginal. I walked into the restroom and I was like, well, I could drink the soap, but that wouldn't do anything. I could tie a line to the shower nozzle and then hang myself that way. But that's kind of finicky. Well, there's Drano in underneath the sink, but that's like a horrible way to die. And then I walked out of the restroom and I tested if this curtain rod here could hold up my weight, and it popped off the wall. And that's why there's this hole in the wall right there. One of these pegs used to be on there and it just came off. So yeah, whenever I see that hole in the wall, it kind of reminds me. So yeah, depression and the meaning crisis is not just propositional, right? That hole in the wall is not a part of my cognition, but it's definitely there due to depression. And it definitely reminds me of it. And yeah, I should definitely deal with it somehow. This little corner has kind of jumped the gun, and it said that religion and other embodied practices should fill that gap, should help deal with this stuff. For instance, Jacob said I should put an icon of the crucifixion up there. That's why he wanted me to show those 3 icons at the beginning of the stream. You might have to go back and look at it. But yeah. When I talk about knowledge not just being propositional, that sort of stuff is what I mean. I also think that Vervaeke's language should be used to explain the meaning crises, right? Like, when I was imagining killing myself, I was doing so imaginally, right? I wasn't like thinking it up in my brain. I was walking around my environment, looking at the things I had, you know. I'm sure that little example is going to freak out a bunch of people. I see many of the people who've arrived in this little corner. People just. Oh, can I click this and bring it up? I don't think so. Many of the people who've arrived in this little corner are people displaced by the meaning crisis, which is an indication that the religious structures in their lives were ineffective at addressing current relevant issues. What would I say about my own tradition? What do I think is the Christian response to today's concern? Yes, I think that the religious structures were ineffective of addressing the meaning crisis. And I don't think that secular structures have done much better. Like the New Atheists came out guns blazing. They beat the Christians, in my point of view, because I don't think the Christians understood their tradition very well. And the whole argument was dumb, and then after the New Atheists won, they didn't have anything to fill the hole. Like woke culture pretty much sprung out of it. And I see religious traditions as at least having preserved this language. Right? When I can my priest is going to make sure that my whatever mental health and let's say spiritual life is on track. I'm not sure, and there's no atheistic structure outside of that. I've talked to psychologists before. I do not think they have integrated Vervaeke's language much at all. Most of the psychologists I've talked to were not very good. So I think they need to realize the embodied, embedded nature of the meaning crisis, or meaning crises as well, which is why I'm trying to bring it up here. What do I think is the Christian response to today's concerns? I mean, today's concerns is like a really broad topic. I'm trying to take it from the meaning crisis to the meaning crises, right? So what I'm doing here is giving a particular example, depression. But I'm sure I haven't seen much of them, but maybe Chad could talk about alcoholism, and I don't know, other people could talk about substance abuse, and there's also other stuff like, bulimia and know, being overweight and all that sort of stuff that I think people have to address individually. Um, as for the Christian response to my meaning crisis, I told Jacob, and that's why Jacob wanted me to present the three icons, one of the Holy Mother, one of the crucifixion, and one of a saint, at the beginning of this stream. And heck, man, I'd love it if, like, during Theophany, a priest blessed this house, but it's not my house. I just use Vervaeke's words to better explain all this stuff. I certainly think that people shouldn't need to learn Vervaeke's words to know about this stuff. Yeah. That's kind of why I'm reaching out to particular religious traditions, because religious traditions have always been concerned with making sure that the laity can understands and engages with all it needs to, no matter its education level. I'm kind of wondering whether I should post this on Discord. Just the whole hole in the wall situation. Because when I talk about the meaning crises being embedded, embodied, external, yada, 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 I'm not too sure that people understand what I mean. And I think it'd be very good to have an example. Make a visual to go with it? Yeah. Yep. Alright. I'll post it sometime tonight. Hopefully then people don't have to catch all these just chatting streams to get my thoughts on things. Diagrams are another example of not so propositional knowledge. I've always loved cartoons. My grandpa gave me a Calvin and Hobbes book back in 8th grade, I think. So always wonderful. Do I know how to dance? No, not at all. I probably should. Does this little corner have a songbook? No, I don't think so. There's been certain songwriters in this little corner. I might be able to find one. There's a flow-fi mix of Mathieu Pajot talking about why is she talking to the snake? As for dancing, yeah, I should probably learn how. Electro swing has always been kind of my thing. Um, and now I'm learning chanting at the moment, so that's pretty cool. You're a Noahide, right, Antonio? Am I remembering correctly? Yeah, that's right. Um, I think it'd be very hard for me to join a religious tradition without a culture. Um, yeah, good on you. Dogs are great too. Yeah, I've got a corgi, Pembroke Welsh corgi, who's slowly turning into an old dog. Mm. It's good to hear. Um, I feel somewhat the same with Orthodoxy because there's not so much a culture within Protestantism, you know? Like, there's no real culture with those big mega churches or whatever. Um, so entering a church with like a definite community and, everyone knows each other and, um, chants the same hymns, goes to the same church. Absolutely wonderful. don't feel pressured to hop on until you know. If I'm going to start with one book to highlight areas missing from Western Christianity, where would you point? Um, I am very interested in icons. If you want a pretty complete overview of the East Orthodox understanding of icons, I would point towards Vladimir Lossky's and Leonid Ouspensky's The Meaning of Icons. Absolutely wonderful book. It'll go all the way through. It's very thorough. If you want a patristic book that's you know, that's concise, uses a lot of the you could say patristic terminology, I would highly recommend St. John of Damascus's 3 treatises on the divine images. Currently, this will get into Cassandra's point too. Currently, the Catholic Church does not have a comprehensive theology on icons. The position of the Catholic Church is that icons are good for teaching, and that's their sole use. The East Orthodox Church, because it's been through iconoclasm, has developed a very extensive theology of icons, and which is completely missing in the Catholic Church. For instance, I know that sounds like a technical topic, but icons participate in the glory of God, and a lot of the theology of icons explains that. Like St. John of Damascus will connect it to Christology, right? Icons of Christ. Losky will connect it to the essence energy distinction. Yeah. What was the first book? The first book is The Meaning of Icons by Losky and Ouspensky. Let me try getting on the stream and typing it out. I I've got to walk the dog, so I'll be